Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Boys, how you doing?
Happy
You know what?
Saturday.
I have to say, I'm doing great.
Why is that, Graham?
What is it they say? I can't remember what they say about something changing, but it takes forever and then all at once. What's that quote?
Yeah, it's from Hemingway, I think. How did you go broke? Very slowly and then suddenly.
Yes, and that's what's happening at the moment, and it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
Stonewall are just about to go into court and explain why they think Morgan Page, the author of Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling, that workshop is more valuable to them than Alison Bailey, a respected barrister, and that's going to be really just wonderful. Ben Cooper cross-examining Stonewall is going to be the big finish for this movie. I can't wait.
Yes, I think Ben Cooper cross-examining Stonewall is going to be something. I think I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to really affect gays.
They finally have to answer. They have to answer for what They have to answer for themselves.
And this is the gay. And the gay people need to wake up to this. Gay people have been keeping their heads down and they've been avoiding the problems. But like we mentioned on the last mess, the New York Times ran an op-ed about, internecine fighting within the LGBTQ rainbow alphabet soup. And then Newsweek this week ran a piece by Ben Appel, who is a gay man, who used to be a Christian conservative when he was young, and then he became like a gay rights activist and a social justice warrior, and even was involved in trans activism for a little bit, and then realized the whole thing was a whole pile of nonsense. And now he's quite outraged. So, that's a mainstream newspaper, a mainstream magazine in the United States talking about gay people speaking up. I'm glad to see that,
Newsweek's also very big with women readers, isn't it? It's like a kind of a thing. Is that right? Did I hear that somewhere? That it's kind of big. It's got a big female readership.
Maybe. I'm not sure.
And the other thing I saw today, which I have been waiting 6 years to see, was I can't remember the name of the woman, but it's someone in America who is Beth. Is that it? Who does sports? Beth Salter about sports. Is that her?
Yes. I recognize what you're saying. Yeah.
Beth Salter. Yeah. And she was on a program with this guy, literally wearing a beard, telling her that you're a woman, but so is that person, pointing to a trans woman, and then someone in the background of first of all, that's such a great visual. A man telling a woman I always want to. Yeah. Once you start seeing that on screen, it's going to end all the faster, But also someone in the background of the shot shouts, "No, women have a pee." And they go, "What?" He goes, "No, women don't have pee-pees." And the whole thing just descends into chaos, because then the host does this thing where he goes, "I can't believe someone said that." And it's like, that's what they're saying.
It's like, I can't believe someone had to say that, because for God's sake,
Beth Stelzer, thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's insane. But listen, we're kind of, I'm just delaying the best news of all, which is investigation into the Tavistock, investigation into, what is the investigation in exactly into? Is it's like the Tavistock and Stonewall, or the Tavistock?
So you're talking about Javid's
announcement? Yes.
Well, it's just the whole thing. He wants to open an investigation, and he wants to fast track opening it as well, because he can see that there are massive problems here, and he's opening an investigation to how the whole thing is run. The fast tracking, the affirmation, how it seems to be how some doctors and health workers have been sort of captured or feel pressured into just affirming immediately. He wants to. The lid has blown open, and he's having a good look, and he wants everyone to have a good look at it.
Yeah,
it's amazing. This is huge news. Huge. This is honestly, we've been talking about it for years. We've been sort of trying to force people to take notice of this, and it's finally happened. Like, Stephanie Davis or I on Transgender Trend, and everyone else who's been doing it. Fucking well done.
Yes. Well done. Absolutely. And
now let's just, for the people, for those of us over the pond, who is this Javid person? Can we explain?
Helen, you're
Health
better at that
Secretary.
than me. Health Secretary.
What?
There you
Oh,
go.
the health secretary. There we go. So the health secretary has ordered an investigation into the central pediatric gender clinic in the UK, and it sounds like a very condemnatory thing already.
Not just the Tavistock, the whole thing. How the NHS is dealing with it.
Oh, the entire
Like,
NHS is
The entire thing.
And
Great.
he also
Fantastic.
compared the sensitivities around the subject, and this is really the stunning thing that he did. He compared the sensitivities around the subject to the sensitivities around the subject of the Rotherham grooming gangs. He's basically nailing the fact that these people are getting away with what they're doing because everyone is either frightened to talk about or trying to frighten others into not talking about it. And so we've got like this incredible worldwide grooming movement. And you know, I've got to be very clear here. Grooming, by grooming, I mean ideological grooming. You know, like one of the things that someone pointed out today that I did a little post on my Substack is that in 2016, was it something like? Let me just check. But you know, there was a bump in people applying to the Tavistock just after a BBC program about 8 years ago. My internet's very slow for some fucking reason.
That Butterflies one?
No, it wasn't Butterfly. Butterflies was ITV, and Butterflies was but Butterflies should be investigated as well. No, it was on CBBC, right?
Oh, okay.
Not even BBC, CBBC. Tavistock and Port advertised their service on a BBC children's TV program first shown in 2014 and repeated numerous times since then. In this clip, Dr. Polly Carmichael talks about the benefits of taking hormone puberty blockers.
That's the one. Yeah.
So that's 2014. So it's now, so that's 8 years, nearly a decade later, right? So you've had how many young lives ruined by this kind of propaganda from the BBC?
Advertising it, like, that's ridiculous. You know, we had the same problem in Canada where all of these gender clinics were advertising to young people. You know, that just gives away the game. You don't advertise, you know, you don't advertise treatments for medical conditions. You know, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
I do think, as Catherine Robillard has said there in the comments, I do think the BBC should be held to account for some of this. You know, they've not done their job as an independent broadcaster. I just don't think they have. I think they've come down on one ideological side, and they've helped perpetuate this.
Well,
they really have.
Here's the most extraordinary aspect to that, Helen. Two of their journalists won awards for their investigation into the Tavistock. Two of their Stephen Nolan did an incredibly powerful investigation into Stonewall, and yes, Dennis will definitely be talking about Alison Bailey at some point. So it's not as if they're completely unfamiliar with the issues here. I went on the BBC and I got treated like I was, Hermann Goering, because and I got treated like that as their journalists were investigating what we've been talking about. You know, so there's a strange. The BBC needs to explain not just why they were so captured, but how they were captured, even with the people within their organization mounting these investigations that were proving that it was all a load of nonsense. You know,
it's crazy.
My last point on this. Even as recently as last month, or not last month, it might have been about a week ago. The BBC had. I need to find again the photograph of this that I took. But the BBC had that person who Juno thingy, who wrote
Juno Dawson.
Juno Dawson. Yeah. Juno Dawson, who's written for Doctor Who. Okay, and again, just a bit of pointless virtue signaling. One thing is worth reminding people of is that two gay men have not worked for Doctor Who. Since they went woke, so they've actually fired two gay men while hiring Juno Dawson. And Juno Dawson said this about the conversion therapy aspect. Juno and Charlie this is the BBC Newsbeat website just a week or two ago. Juno and Charlie were speaking to Newsbeat the day after hundreds of people protested outside Downing Street in London against government plans to ban conversion therapy for gay, lesbian, gay and bisexual people, but not for transgender people. The government says it will carry out separate work on gender conversion therapy and is keen for any policy not to have unintended consequences, describing it as a legally complex area. And then in bold, the question, what is conversion therapy? And then they give this quote from Juno: "We're living in quite a scary time for trans people. I'm a trans person and I'm quite scared," says Juno. "One of the ways things will get better is to let trans people tell stories about trans people." Like, this is the kind of thing that's been driving me mental for the last few years. These are the last
stories. They've been telling fucking stories for a decade, haven't they? That's their undoing.
Exactly. At least now Juno Dawson's working for Doctor Who, which is fiction. But to fucking tell kids that conversion therapy for trans people is in any way similar to conversion therapy for gay people is an absolute, it's an appalling lie.
Isn't Juno Dawson a homosexual transsexual, if I'm not mistaken?
Yeah, I think so.
So Juno Dawson is somebody who used to say that they were a gay man and now says they are no longer a gay man. Doesn't that sound like conversion therapy to you? Somebody whose entire identity revolves around no longer being a gay man, up in arms about conversion therapy, just seems a little bit on the nose to me.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. But also there's this idea that you've got to listen to trans people. It's like, hang on a second. Why should we listen to some bloke in his 30s, right, who genuinely has dysphoria, and which is a mental illness, or what the hell is this about if it's not a mental illness, who genuinely has dysphoria, and because he has this mental illness, he believes that if he had turned into a woman at a younger age, he'd be happier than he is now. And the truth is that he'll never be happier, because he cannot be the thing he most wants to be. It's desperately sad. It's a terrible condition if you have it. But the frightening thing is that you would take someone, and let's compare it to someone who thinks they're Napoleon, and put them in charge of of dealing with a movement where basically all these kids suddenly think they're Napoleon.
It's the historical.
Yes, you are Napoleon.
It's the historical revisionism of the whole thing that's been one of the most terrible parts of it, hasn't it? You know, grown-up adult men who late transitioning, really championing puberty blockers for children, under the impression that they, saying, I would have been happier, this is what I would have wanted, but having no real knowledge of how they would have felt without having gone through male puberty.
That's right.
Honestly, I was talking to a friend of mine in the pub last night about this, and he made a really good point about male puberty is such a big deal. You get that massive injection of testosterone. It really changes you sort of physically and mentally, and not allowing boys to go through this is just, it's preventing them from becoming the people that they should be. And it's keeping them in a more sort of in a very much more childlike state. Obviously, a childlike state.
Yeah.
Let's remember,
and it's such an important thing to remember, that they're preventing them from actually being themselves, actually being who they should be, preventing them from finding out who they are.
Yeah, and I had an argument with homosexual transsexuals online. They were coming right out and saying that. These were a couple of gay, homosexual male, trans women, male, trans-identified males. They had acknowledged the Blanchard typology. They acknowledged that they were effeminate homosexuals, but they were saying very clearly they hated being gay men. Because they hated that they were so effeminate. They kind of like they couldn't attract the gay men that they wanted to attract, the more typically masculine, traditional sort of seeming gay men. But typically masculine, traditional seeming straight men very often have a thing for gynecorophilia, for cross-dressing feminine gay men. So they found they could get more of what they wanted, find the relationships and partnerships and sexual partners that they wanted by transitioning. But they also said they despised the gay community and they despised gay culture because they felt like they couldn't get the partners that they wanted within it because they were too feminine. And I asked one of them, like, so do you think a 12-year-old feminine boy who is very likely to grow up to be gay do you think you should transition them right then and there? Do you think automatically they'll be better off as trans women than as gay men? And he said, yes. He said, there's no reason letting them try being gay men. There's no reason letting them go through puberty. It's just such a horrible thing to be feminine and gay. Even though a lot of these feminine kids grow up to be kind of gender typical, you should just right at the outset, just turn them into trans women because they'll be better off. This is just an outright attack on gay men. This is just like, it's horrible to be gay from self-hating gay men, you know, sometimes. Not all homosexual, transsexual like that. But these ones were very outspoken and explicit. It was really shocking, you know?
Wow, that's really interesting. I mean, basically, you know, it's not to say that there aren't a lot of things within all these groups and movements and organizations and families that need to be sorted out. There's obviously stuff that needs to be talked about and stuff, but the fact that this false narrative has been built up over the last 10 years, that there's a group of these new types of people and you know, you can't really explain what they are. They're just trans. You know, they're trans.
Glenna, you hit the nail on the head. It's that false narrative that's built up around the whole thing, hasn't it? But what's happening? What's happening finally is that false narrative is being pulled apart. You know, no debate is done. It is absolutely gone. But now even the lies, the falseness of it, the pretense that's being seen through, it's being undone. Finally, it's very late in the game to be doing it, but they are doing it. It's happening. You've seen it. Even in America now, you can see who are, you know, much they're much further behind the curve than us.
Yeah.
But you can see the it's the children is really capturing them. They're beginning to say, hang on, this
and
is,
also
this is
with
not
the sport,
right.
it's the pincer of the adult obvious males, jock males running rampant in women's sports. These shocking images of Leah Thomas. That's waking people up that trans isn't an innate thing. This is just men choosing to cross-dress for various reasons and not innately being transgender. That's waking people up to that. And then you apply that to the kids and you go, oh, I see what's going on here. You know? So it's the two of them. They're both very emotionally shocking things. And when you put them together, people really, you know,
yes, it's interesting, isn't it? It's the kids in the sports, not the women.
I know.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, Helen, you know, I mean, I've been talking about this for 6 years, and I really thought it would be easier to convince people to care about women's rights. And I have to say, it's not just men; it's women as well. It's like, you know, it's the way that some of the private conversations I've had with fairly famous people, you know, who you would imagine had a progressive attitude towards this, like women as well. You would not believe.
I think the problem is that people feel that they do have a progressive attitude. That's the thing, isn't it? That's the false narrative. It has been sold brilliantly. Like I've said before, the one thing they've done is that they've sold their message really well. They've sold it as the progressive movement, and it takes a fair bit of unpicking before you begin to see. You know, this is why people talk of peaking, because they come in on the side of let's be kind, let's be nice, it's all great, it's all good, this is a movement that, you know, this is the new gay rights, we've said it blah 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 so many times before, but this is why you have to peak, you have to see it. You don't, you know, you come in on that side. And so that's, you know, most people do think that this is the progressive way of doing it. You have to think about it, you have to see something and actually think, hang on, you have to have the presence of mind to go and question it. You have to do a little bit of research, although less so now. It is becoming more mainstream. The other message is getting out there. We had a Lib Dem and Labour at the door today. I missed them both because I was making mischief with women. But my husband answered, and he said to the Lib Dem, you know, in this house we do have a problem with this. And the Lib Dem chap said, I am going to take this back, he said, because I'm hearing this message everywhere on all the doorsteps. This is what's coming back to me. And so they cannot, you know, they cannot pretend that they're not getting this message on the doorstep, because they're getting it everywhere on all the doorsteps. It was so brilliant.
And can I tell you the other sign that things are crumbling? It comes from another group of people who are behaving in an interesting way. People who are in Stonewall are quitting in their droves. I think there's 17 places up for grabs now at Stonewall.
Wow.
And also the head of legal at Mermaids has just quit. the head of legal. Now,
I think Dennis said he was going to go for one of those jobs. Nice to see you back on Twitter, and I hope you do. Go for them all.
Listen, I don't want to give mermaids advice, but I just this once I will. Mermaids, don't hire Dennis Cameron. It'll just end all the quicker for you. But the thing is, like the fact that I think that the legal person quitting is an early admission. And I think the Stonewall people quitting is an early admission. I
saw somebody on the chat say that not only has the head of legal at Mermaids quit, they've deleted their whole Twitter account.
That's right. That's another thing. Oh shit! I hope someone archived it. In fact,
it's happening, isn't it? It's happening. We need to archive everything.
Yeah.
Archive it all.
Archive it all, everybody. If you're out there and
you
can think of someone who might want to try and reinvent them or pretend they weren't involved in this, then archive their Twitter account. You know, that'll be a crucial thing to do over the next while. But to just quickly go back to that bearded bloke, like we've had a few incidents of this. There was the wee spa, the guy telling the woman she was being a bit of a dick because she's amazing guy.
I get the image of his face in my head and I just get angry.
just look perfect. I also noticed someone doing it to Kelly J at the swimming, whispering over to her, "Excuse me, she's actually a woman. She's just a trans woman." And Kelly J.
Kelly J's like,
"Fuck off!" Yeah, it's the funniest thing. And now Beth
she's like, "Don't you know who I am?"
And now Beth on this program being told by a bearded man that, you know, you're a woman and so is she, you know, and I just, the brilliant thing about all this is all the gaslighting that we've seen over the last few years, all the men like you know, all the men blocking women like Billy Bragg and you know, Joy Mom and all these people. They are about to run out of road. There's nowhere else they can go. If they want to talk about this, they're going to have to talk about it in front of cameras with people who don't agree with them on these matters. Otherwise, they're going to just simply go down as basically agreeing with whatever the investigations are going to throw up. And we know what the investigations are going to throw up, you know?
Yeah, it's going to be so. I'm going to have to read more. You know, I've talked about East Germany a lot and the sort of after the wall fell, the reckoning. I have to read more about reckonings in history because I'm so fascinated by how this is going to go down. So many people have been so vocal that trans women are women, and they got so on board with this horseshit that it's like a doomsday cult with the clock counting down. And then the apocalypse doesn't come when the clock hits 0. And then they're all standing around going, "Oh, fuck, what do we do now?" You know, this is what it's going to be like for these people. So it's going to be really, really a really fascinating psychological experiment, but not an experiment, a spectacle.
Yes.
You know, let's take bets on who's going to be saying sorry and who's going to be like holding out the longest.
I keep thinking, is it worth writing up a post or putting out a video saying, look, you know, there's going to be things appearing about this, and they're going to be talking about your role in it. You know, like Billy Bragg, for instance, his role in it has simply been to call women bigots, to block everyone who disagrees. You know, to cast feminists as anti-trans, all this sort of stuff. You know, he's never really had to back up his opinions in any serious way. But
no.
You know, is it worth giving them the golden bridge now and saying, look? Is it worth just you guys just saying, maybe I just didn't understand the whole issue. I wasn't looking into it deeply enough, because, you know, otherwise it's going to be a sore point for the rest of our lives. You know what I mean?
It would be interesting to write a piece that's something like that says, look, this is the way the tide is going, and just lay out the exact direction that things are going in and how they've already gone.
That's a good way of doing it.
And say, look, this is the future that you are looking at. You will be paying for what you're doing. So you better get off that train now. You know, the sooner the better.
I think you're right with, you know, Bragg hasn't actually had to, you know, he hasn't had to explain himself. And I think, like we was just saying at the beginning of the show, that mermaids are actually going to be cross-examined. Stonewall, they're going to be cross-examined next week with the Alison Bailey. They are actually going to have to address the point. They've ignored it all. They've ignored every single argument, anything that we've said. It's all, you know, this is the new gay rights. They've ignored everything, but they are going to actually have to they're going to have to
Yeah.
answer some questions.
Isn't it extraordinary, right, that we've, like, in all these cases, they all go to the wire. I mean, obviously, I was rattled by Raquel not winning her case. That was really, really heartbreaking.
It
It was
yeah.
heartbreaking. Yeah, and you're right. But I do want to say, I do felt that she had, in part, she did get some vindication. You know, the judge did actually say, you've definitely been bullied. You've definitely been subject to threats. Because up until then, the university was even really denying that she, you know, that anything had sort of happened. So despite the fact that the law wasn't actually there, that, you know, it turns out Bristol University don't have a duty of care to their students. But she was vindicated. She was, I feel, in a way. And honestly, if she has to pay the legal cost to the other side, I'm sure that we can crowdfund for that. I'm sure there'll be so many women and men who would be prepared to give to that.
Yeah, and she's been on our show, and you should all go back and watch that episode again. She's a really extraordinary woman. She really, really floored me. I was so honored and impressed to have met her. Yeah,
came over to the UK to study feminism, became one of the UK's most famous feminists and most important feminists. Love it.
Yes,
absolutely brilliant story. But, like, you know, the other thing that's going to happen is that there are going to be a lot of more stories coming out. I don't know if you've been following the Elon Musk stuff with Netflix, but did we? I don't think we spoke about this, but he said something like the woke mind virus has made Netflix unwatchable in response to the Netflix shares going, you know, plummeting. And when he said that, they plummeted even further. And you also have a situation in Florida where Disney tried to hold DeSantis to ransom, and they just turned around and told me, you know, called their bluff, and Disney, you know, are now in big trouble, you know, if they don't shape up. A lot of these companies, I think, are now realizing this is going to start costing us money if we keep listening to these lunatics, you know.
This really ties back to the BBC as well. Like, these companies like Disney and the BBC, they think that it's the new default, it's the new neutral to be gung-ho about trans activism. You know, they don't see it as an extremely extremist position. They see it as the neutral position.
Yeah,
just
yeah.
like it's neutral to be to equal rights for gays. That's not an extremist position. And then you have to peak. And the BBC isn't going to start, you know, even though their own journalists are speaking out against the problem, the culture is still there that it's neutral to think that trans is just like the new gay. And that to be opposed to that is to be stuck in the past. That's going to have to die down first before these companies wake up and realize. You know, we have to get to the point where everybody realizes that trans is a mental health situation and a social contagion extraordinaire, and not some kind of magical.
It's interesting. I was talking to a woman earlier about this. You know, there's a sort of parallel to be drawn, isn't there? That to be a sort of a trans activist, it's always, I mean, it is unsustainable. Now people are waking up to it. You know, they're looking around, you know, like it's on the doorstep everywhere now, because people are looking at it and they're realizing, you know, trans activism have to really work hard at keeping the wool over people's eyes, like keeping this going. It's hard. It's unsustainable. Just like, you know, when you become trans, it's fighting the tide. You have to continually take medicine, it's continuous sort of intervention to just keep it going. It must be exhausting, and it's running out of road, man. It's running out of road.
The mammoth line always jumps into my head. Always tell the truth. It's easier to remember. You know, it is like basically, you know, I know I've said this before, but trans rights activists, they really remind me of Trump in the way in the tactics they use. You know, they're out, like, they will always kind of, if you attack them, they attack twice as hard back. You know, they never apologize, they never back down. You know, they deflect.
You're silencing us. You silence us, and you're like, honest.
Yeah, they play the victim. They avoid any kind of scrutiny. You know, it basically this was the era of Trump, and the trans rights activists are the ones who learned the lesson. Or the ones who attended the lesson most carefully. I mean, you know,
look at that book. You must have seen that Gretchen Volker Martin book. That you must have seen it. Some trans woman has written
The one.
horror novel, a horror novel.
Oh, yes.
Where J.K. Rowling actually gets trapped in a burning castle, dies, and it's the most awful, and it's horror. If you read a précis of it, it's absolutely vile. It's full of violent fantasies against women. And it's being published by an offshoot of Macmillan. It's just being published. Imagine, Julie Binder wrote an absolutely brilliant, hard-hitting piece on it that was published in the Daily Mail earlier. And it's can you imagine if anyone from our side wrote a novel or even an article that had even 100th of the violence towards trans people that show towards women? It's just incredible. But you still get people saying, "Oh no, fault on both sides," and you're no,
Where?
no, absolutely not, man.
Let me tell you a funny story. I've got a similar story. Sorry, Helen, you just reminded me of this because I was in. I went to my local newsagents and I was talking to the bloke behind the counter, and he says to me, and he says, "Oh, I like audiobooks because I'm listening to something on my thing." And he says, "Oh, who do you like listening to?" And I say, "Who I like listening to?" And he says, "Oh, I like Stephen Leather." And I immediately, kind of without thinking about it, because it's such a long story to explain, I went, "Oh, I'm in one of his books, right?" And it's true. Stephen Leather is this thriller writer, and he's been accused of running lots of sock puppet accounts that he uses to harass other writers that he's jealous of and stuff like this. And there was some very credible stuff going on. If you Google Nick Cohen, Stephen Leather, you'll see. But I was amplifying all this stuff and I was talking about it a lot. And he wrote this extended piece, a fantasy about me getting my head cut off by Bin Laden supporters because I did that Bin Laden joke where I said that he was watching the IT crowd when he was shot. Like an extended fan. So because he'd seen me spread, sharing these stories about him, he put me in his book and he had someone cutting my head off. If anyone could find that section, will you take a screen grab and send it to me? I would love to post it on the site.
Did you tell that to the bloke who?
No, I just thought, where do I begin with that?
Well, really, how do I get out of this? Once you've told him you're in it, and then he's like, "Oh yeah, how?" Well, he hates my guts, and he wrote a story.
He hates my guts because so he wrote a big long fantasy about cutting my head off. But that's a very kind of that's a very sociopathic thing to do. You know what I mean? Like that's just trying to put it in someone's head. You know what I mean? That's really, really.
That's awful. It's awful. But let's be positive because I think the tide is turning. This is the beginning of the end. It is. It's the beginning of the end.
There's no way. First of all, okay, Stonewall is not going to survive next month. So, Morgan Page. All people have to hear is who Morgan Page is and the types of workshops he ran. And I hope, by the way, that if Alison or any of her team are watching this, they know about GNC-centric Benji's statement on the Benjamin Boyce video about Morgan Page and about the LGBT group that Morgan Page ran. I hope that Alison's lawyers are aware of that. It's really important, I think. To show the kind of atmosphere that young lesbians are dealing with at the moment and that Alison has been fighting against, and the fact that in the letter that the Stonewall sent to Alison's chambers to try and get her fired, they actually mentioned Morgan Page in that letter. They said, she said this about Morgan Page. Fucking, it could not be better. That could not be better news that they did that, because now they're going to have to explain. Oh, what does overcoming the cotton ceiling mean? Why are you're supposed to be a gay organization? Why do you still have on your website? And if you Google Morgan Page Stonewall, you'll see he's still on the website.
Oh, that is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Because they're so arrogant. They just think they don't have to hide these things. So he's still up there,
It became clear in Maya's case, didn't it, that actually people have to answer. You're under oath and you're obliged to answer questions. It's honestly, I don't think they've done themselves any favors here at all.
Not by mentioning
all.
Morgan Page. Morgan Page it goes to the very heart of why Stonewall has betrayed lesbians. You know, not only to say that some men can have penises, but some lesbians can have penises. I always fuck that up. Not only
it's
to
because
say
it's the default is such an obvious because it's men.
It's men.
Exactly. Not only to say that, but to endorse a man who ran a workshop called Overcoming the Cotton Ceiling, which looked to identify obstacles to trans men getting their end away and discuss ways to overcome them.
Yeah, this is a systematic, industrialized training men to go out and train women to learn, lesbians to learn how to like.
Yes, as Rachel McKinnon said to someone, lesbians say they don't like penis, but most can cope. You use the word
cope. Like that. Like, why would you want to have sex with someone who is only just coping with it? That is just a testament to the horrific narcissism and the complete dehumanizing of women, as if they're just objects of their own men's sexual fulfillment. This goes down to a lot of all this, is that this whole idea of womanhood is a man's fantasy and nothing but, it's really, really awful. But it's good to go back to what you were saying, Helen, about they shot themselves in the foot by realizing now they're going to have to testify. Yeah, I mean, we've been saying this on the show for a long time. When you force people to answer questions, they can crumble within 3 questions. This entire movement goes by people just never answering questions. Nobody answers the standalone question barely, or it takes so long to get them to answer it. You have to really, really corner them and nail them down, until they finally go, fine, they're men with dicks. And they should be in women's spaces. And it's like, aha, there we go. So when you put someone on the stand, they're screwed because you just ask them the most basic questions. And when they absolutely have to answer them directly, everything falls apart. I really think that that's the best way to win a debate, is to make sure at the beginning of any debate to lay down the terms that you must answer any question that you have been asked directly and straightforwardly. You can't dodge. You can expand upon your yes or no answer afterwards, but you start with a yes or a no.
Good.
Yeah.
We should bring Aaron back on. We should bring Aaron back on.
I know.
He'll agree to that, I'm sure. Sorry, Helen.
I had a bloke the other day who I asked the question sort of 4 or 5 times, and then he finally said, well, I wouldn't put it in those words. And I'm like, no, of course you wouldn't put it in those words.
No,
because
you
putting it in those words means that you actually have to think, you have to consider what it is you're advocating for. The fact that you won't put it in the words of exactly what you want is really concerning, isn't it? Isn't that the point when you must start to think, yeah, but why wouldn't I? Is it because I'm ashamed of my stance on this? It's incredible. But anyway, so they will have to answer, and it's going to be very interesting.
Well, Ben Cooper got those amazing moments out of the. Sorry, Helen.
No. Carry on. It's exactly right.
Ben Cooper got those amazing moments out of the Maya Forstater cross-examination when he revealed that some consultants had said to Maya that lesbians would have to stop calling themselves lesbians because trans women are women too. I mean, the homophobia of the whole movement was laid bare and is now on the record. And can you imagine what juicy moments the Stonewall thing is going to throw? It's going to be a joy from beginning to end.
I did see somebody saying something quite sort of insightful and interesting earlier on Twitter with this Javid investigation into how these services have been run, that they really hoped that organizations like Stonewall and Mermaid weren't going to start up again trying to terrify people, trying to terrify sort of vulnerable kids into again believing that everyone hates them and that everything is awful and that it's, and there's going to be waves of suicide. I really hope that these organizations, I mean, I think it's a faint hope that they sort of become adults and think, let's handle this properly. Let's not try and scare the shit out of people again, because I've genuinely seen it. We've all seen it. again and again, like kids being told. It's such an insidious movement. Kids being told that everyone hates them. I saw a woman respond saying, as soon as my kid, I'm terrified for my child because now they've come out as trans. Everyone hates them simply for coming out as trans without knowing them at all. Everyone hates them. And I'm like, nobody fucking hates your kid, man. Like, nobody hates your kid.
Nobody.
Just stop it. Like,
Exactly.
Stop it.
I'll tell you.
Why are you telling your kid this? Why are you telling your kid that everyone hates them? What the hell is that all about?
Did you see that that TV show about the woman who had her kid in a wheelchair and the kid didn't need to be in a wheelchair? It was called something like The Act or something.
Oh, there you go. That's Munchausen by proxy right there.
Munchausen by proxy, but like it's a whole fucking generation of women who are behaving like this. Like again. Men too, but
dads are terrible at this. Yeah,
really. I did because I just see it's usually women I see doing it. Do you see a lot of men doing it as well?
Well, I'm thinking of the Mermaids woman. She was doing it to appease her homophobic husband and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. There's that. Yeah. And also there was that guy who was.
I think it's very important to consider why women might often do things that is against their interests. Because of the situation that they're in,
with their spouses and their partners.
There's huge issues around that. I don't think you can't look at things without it's not in a vacuum. I mean, honestly, there are some women who I absolutely loathe and I think are just being, saying just ridiculous things and are just completely wrong on this. But there are also vast swathes of women who are just going along for maybe for reasons that we haven't necessarily thought of.
Yeah.
It is jarring how many mothers are doing this to their sons and daughters, though. It's really shocking. Mothers and fathers. It's just.
I always say this to people, but you really, really must watch the Susie Green TED Talk. Like you are literally talking about a woman who decided her child's fate when the child was 4 years old. She begins there. She says,
and they have to keep it up. Like she's literally to validate her decision around this. She's having to trans thousands of other kids. To make sure
exactly.
that
that's all this has been.
So that she doesn't have to consider that maybe it wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah,
like you see it on I Am Jazz. There's a massive industry grown around that. There's no way at any point, was there any sort of ability for Jennings to come back and say, actually, I've changed my mind on this. It never happened.
It's like a Ponzi scheme. It's like you just have to trans more and more and more people so that you're not the one on the hook, realizing that you screwed up. As long as you just get more people into it, then you're safe. It's just like a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme,
I remember
looking at it.
I remember one of the incels, I think it was Kirsty, was talking about all these girls with ROGD, and it may not have been Kirsty. I apologize if this is incorrect. It was one of those lunatics. But like he was reporting about all the young girls who were suffering from ROGD, and he literally said, yes, keep recruiting. I mean, so basically, what you do is you have a self-fulfilling prophecy of these trans people who will take drugs and who will have osteoporosis, which I can never pronounce, and who will go into early menopause, and all these things will create medical problems for trans people, and that will be called trans healthcare, right? So it's just like it's creating these problems. They've kind of done a horrible trick of the imagination. They've created in real life an absolutely monstrous problem, a problem that is going to really damage
and honestly,
people for years.
They really, really owe so much now to the kids that have been put on puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, without really much thought going into it at all. Because this is it for life for them. This is not irreversible. You can come back from it, and you can in many ways, and you can continue with your life, but they need massive amount of support, especially when this investigation is done, and they will of course understand that this, like, immediate sort of affirmation only, don't question all of the other stuff around it, has been a terrible thing. And because of that, I think a lot of the kids who were sort of affirmed straight away, they're going to then question, aren't they? They're going to say, well, was this right for me? And they are going to need a huge amount of support. And I really hope that all these organizations take their responsibilities absolutely fucking seriously over that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, these gay, I mean, I'm starting to see gay people in my area. I mentioned this before on the show, who no longer have penises because they're young and they got roped into, ROGD or affirmation, and now they're in their early 20s and they're going on the dating apps and they're looking for boyfriends and they realize they're just gay men, but they don't have a penis anymore because they underwent the surgery at far too young. We're starting to see this already happening. So these gay rights organizations, these so-called LGBTQ, LMNOP places, are going to have to become resources not for the trans people they're obsessed with, but for detrans people. Because now the biggest expense and the biggest issue in the community is going to be gay people who were roped into sex changes that were unnecessary and who are now detransitioned and need support. All of these organizations, like the big one in the center of my city, it's a big building. It's the big community center at the heart of the gay community. This is where GNC Centric had the Morgan Page experience and all the grooming was happening to the children. The mural on the side of it is a teenage girl binding her breasts in a big
No.
Yeah. So Jesus. The center looming over the gay community is a teenage girl binding her breasts in a big, beautiful, looming down over the whole village.
How does that not, how do people not walk past that and think, that's not right?
Because that's what they've done to it.
But they're going to have to take that mural down and replace it with a mural of a girl with scars who's trying to get breast reconstruction surgery or something, because that's what's going to end up happening. The consequences of all of this is going to be the exact opposite. That building isn't going to be full of kids with strange pronouns. It's going to be full of kids with regular pronouns and scars on their bodies who need support and help to recover. I'd
like to very quickly use this to talk about someone who maybe I'm sure would never watch this show, but someone called Noah Halpin. Noah Halpin is a trans man, a trans-identifying woman who lives in Ireland and was actually an advisor to the Irish government on trans issues. So Noah is one of these people who, when they say listen to trans people, Noah is one of the trans people they listen to. Mm-hmm. So I saw a tweet by Noah a few weeks ago that said, "'Twas Zoladex today, and those who know," right? Because unfortunately, Noah, and I'm not saying this to be mean, I'm saying this because I think it's a sign of a huge problem. Noah is always either tweeting about going to the hospital or about having been to the hospital. Apparently Noah's like, oh, I've got pre-existing conditions and stuff like this. And apparently Scott Nugent once said to Noah, that's what I used to tell myself too. So Noah is now encouraging other people to get these operations and to go through these procedures. So I was kind of thinking about Zoladex. I was thinking, what is Zoladex? So I asked a friend, and I hope she doesn't mind. I won't reveal who it is, but I asked a friend about it. I said, why would Noah Halpin, a trans man, need these injections? And my friend said, it blocks estrogen production from ovaries, but if Noah's on testosterone, I don't know why she'd need that. And then she goes, she says, I don't know why Noah would need it. A cynic might think it's because two drugs make more profit from vulnerable people than one. I've asked the medics, right? And then she went on to saying, breast, ovarian, and endometrial cancer all feed off estrogen. So those women are given meds to knock out their ovaries to reduce risk of recurrence, which means they all get menopausal symptoms, but that's better than death, which is reasonable exchange of risk benefit. I'm not convinced the same is true for a healthy female with no cancer and a gender dysphoria who's already on testosterone. And I said, someone in another group suggested that it could be for bone thinning. And I said, does that sound possible? She said, nope, it'll make the bone thinning worse. It blocks estrogen. Bone health means preserving estrogen. That's why people get HRT to artificially supplement it. And the final thing she said was, I'm willing to bet that Noah will be on an expensive drug for unclear clinical application, but Noah will believe is vital from early 20s to 51. Average age of menopause. Let's say 25 years of expense. right?
I can see that. I can absolutely see that. It's so doctors are so quick to prescribe meds and not really pay much attention to the sides and be much more concerned about, and often have kickback schemes, in the United States, that's an epidemic, the kickback schemes, of course. That's how the pharmaceutical companies are.
Well, and also, but now we know that the women are being, there's HRT shortages. Women are being, women are unable to get HRT for the menopause because there's been a huge demand. Because I hadn't appreciated, but trans women take way more HRT, estrogen, than women who actually take it on HRT. Sort of 2 or 3 times the amount. I can't think that is nothing to do with this shortage.
Yeah, absolutely. But like, I just, the thing about Noah is, again, I think, like, Noah's called me a bigot many times, but I really hope that one day she kind of wakes up to what we were all saying earlier, that, now that this is being discovered, that maybe these procedures aren't really the best for people. She's got to make a decision soon, or he, if he prefers, has got to make a decision soon on whether they're going to help people or whether they're going to slow down the process of helping these people. Because what we need now is we need proper investigation, proper scrutiny, real science, no ideological, fuck Judith Butler, Judith Butler in the bin, all these people in the bin, they're not involved in this discussion. This is now a medical discussion. And
that's right. This is about science, not about queer theory. Queer theory is not a branch of biology. Queer theory is a branch of literary criticism. Queer theory, now we're operating on human bodies and modifying human endocrine systems and sterilizing people en masse over a literary criticism theory that has no scientific backing whatsoever. That is a massive crossing of lines that needs to be drawn back,
Yeah, and it's effect, like, we've all seen the stories about medical students in America who can't use language, who can't use like simple language, they use the most convoluted language to talk about things because they've been, hornswoggled by this nonsense, So really,
what is that word? Hornswoggled?
Hornswoggled.
It's a great word.
It's Saturday evenings, taking us into Saturday evening.
I've been reading Larry McMurtry westerns, but like, but you know what I mean? They bamboozled, shall we say? I always that's my favorite word. I just thought I was using it too much, But but like, basically, there's a lot of people like people who've tangled with me, people who may have thought I was bigot, who may have accused me of bigotry or anything like that, I really would like to extend the kind of fucking olive branch and say, come on and let's talk about it. And is there a way that you can see maybe admitting that you did not know the full story so that we can move past this, the bitterness and the horribleness and the nastiness?
Well, sorry, carry on.
No, that's it. That's all.
Well, I really do hope that it'll be interesting. Like, again, let's cycle back to where we started. It'll be really interesting to see how people react as it becomes more and more obvious that the House of Cards is crumbling. There are some people, presumably, who are just going to have to carry on just digging in. Like, I imagine, like, people with an interest, like Morn. I think, there's a trans child there somewhere, isn't there? I think
it's a gravy train for Mom, but
he changed his
combination
mind.
of both. Combination of both.
There's definitely a personal connection because a few years ago he said, I don't think trans women should play in women's sports, and then that all changed. But there are people with a personal sort of connection, and again, if they've just like sort of Susie Green, because they have done this to their child, they are going to do anything. They are never going to admit that this might have been a mistake. I just can't think that they will.
Some people have gone further than others.
Yeah, and like Owen Jones, he hasn't got sort of a personal connection, but his sort of political allegiances are laid bare. I mean, he's tweeted so much about it. He's been so there with it. It'll be fascinating to see what happens. It really will.
Well, what happens,
Well,
I've said this before about the doomsday cult comparison, is that the people who were only sort of involved in the doomsday cult are the ones who recover and admit that they made a mistake. But it's the people who made a big public scene about believing that the end of the world was coming. The more publicly you tied yourself to that belief, the more you're going to be in outright denial, because the more painful it's going to be to get out of it. So like the Owen Joneses of the world, this is actually how some religions form, is that they announce that there's a doomsday, they announce that there's an exact date. The date comes and goes. Most people just walk away embarrassed, the fringe people. But the core, they'll actually say doomsday did actually come, but then a miracle came and stopped it or something like that. They won't admit, so you're going to have people like Owen Jones not insisting that, all that the collapse never happened. I
do wonder about that.
Maybe.
It may actually go, it's interesting, but I believe there was another event. What was it? I can't remember what it was, but there was some event, some kind of mass delusion that happened in the past. And there are no records of it because people were just embarrassed by it. So it's very, very...
Well, we've got screenshots.
Oh, boy. People will never forget this one, And, and I will say that there are certain people who don't really deserve a golden bridge. They've been given every chance and they've responded to it with the most appalling aggression and accusations.
Yeah, aggression and bullying. Accusations, absolutely.
People like Owen Jones, the Scottish actor, Aidan Comerford, anyone who wants to be taken seriously ever again has to apologize for their behavior in the last 5 years. It's that simple. Because otherwise, I genuinely, I've said this to you before.
Well, Owen Jones has to do more than that. He has to resign. He cannot be a journalist ever again.
He's not going to. The thing is, if they were the kind of people who would apologize for this, they would be the kind of people who would be slightly more thoughtful over it anyway. They're not going to. It's not going to happen. It's going to be there's going to be.
I guess what I'm saying, Helen.
There's going to be a bit of a rollback of it's going to be. We would never advocate for the extremes. No, we were never after this. We just want acceptance because it will. There will always be now. I think.
But as you say,
people who want to live in the sort of the social expression of the other sex. That's not going to go away. So it will settle down. The children thing will hopefully really settle down. That's. I think that'll be almost eliminated. There will be a point where we will look back and we will say, how the hell did we allow schools to just start calling them by different names and not tell their parents? The fuck was that all about? I think
how did we start taking children away from their parents and putting parents in prison? This is insane,
Is that actually happened in Australia, didn't it? Is that guy still in prison in Australia?
I don't remember, but we're legislating the same thing here.
Yeah,
the dad, yeah. Well, it really is, but I think you're right. I guess my point isn't that Owen Jones should apologize, because I agree that he will never apologize. But there are certain people who simply should not be employed ever again. And I don't say that lightly after having people like Jones and others come after my livelihood. But unless you're able to own up to the great harm that you've caused in the last few years, then why should anyone take you seriously on anything ever again?
I do hope that some people will at least feel uncomfortable, inside, even if they never say anything publicly. I do hope that they consider what it is that they've done, because they have, people have contributed to this. This hasn't just been talking and anger. This has affected people's lives hugely.
Oh, yes,
very
people
much.
like you, Graham, lots of women's lives, but also thousands of children's lives.
Yeah, and adults too. There are a lot of adults. Yeah,
and adults. Yeah,
a lot of adults who are young adults, even middle-aged adults who with whatever their mental health distress causes them to go in on this. I remember there was a man. He was I don't remember. He was kind of he seemed like quite a swashbuckling kind of character. He was like a photojournalist or something. He was living in Africa. He lived all around the world. A really extraordinary, interesting life. He lost all 3 of his children in 3 different incidences, which is just the most painful thing. I can't imagine the agony of losing all of your children in separate circumstances, one after the other. And he was in so much agony over this. He didn't know what to do, and he somehow, there was a spark that maybe he can have a sex change and transition and become a new person and get away from all of his demons, and then he went all in. He just leapt into it. He started getting HRT. He had facial feminization surgery, and he had electrolysis, and he had all this stuff done to him. And then about a year later, after therapy over losing his children, he started reconciling with himself, and he realized that all he had done is harm himself more by getting into, trans identity. And he regrets all the things he did in that period. I think about men like that, and I feel they're victims too, these men who think, and then you could say, well, maybe during that time when he thought he's a woman, he might have been, he might have been encouraged to use women's washrooms and things, and that's not good, and that's bad, and he should apologize for that. But I also think what a tragedy. He's done so much damage to his body because he was in a mental health crisis, and he was told by all of society that to do damage to himself instead of to get help.
This will change. This is changing. I think it's well, like I've said 3 times now in this same show, the House of Cards is toppling, man. It's toppling.
Yeah. But I think
if I had wine, I'd be cheersing as it is.
Same.
Well, we should wrap it up, but I do want to just kind of, I know what Artie's saying there, and I think we do. That is the next thing that, unfortunately, because this is such a hinge moment in history that we are going to have to go on to do, and that is we're going to have to help the people pick up the pieces. I mean, there's going to be there's so many victims from this that it's going to be a long old process getting people.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
This was a war. This was a war, and wars have victims.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Yeah.
But at least we're winning. At least we've nearly won. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Definitely.
No more children experimented on. No more women losing their livelihoods. And the Father Ted musical, hopefully.
I mean, it's the beginning of the end. There's still a lot of work to be done. So, and I think this is quite key. We can't rest on our laurels. We can never rest on our laurels again. We've seen how quickly women's rights, children's rights have been sort of just taken away.
And gay rights. We've
got to be vigilant. Gay rights, we've got to be vigilant forever.
Yeah. And just critical thinking. The internet makes people go crazy. The internet makes strange phenomena happen. Social media has changed the landscape of civilization, and crazy hysterias and social contagions can spread like wildfire. This is our lesson. We have to be diligent and not let this happen again.
Absolutely.
Because the next time it's going to bring a dictator into power,
Yeah. I think that's a great way to go out. That was really great. Thank you.
Can I just plug my my
with
Wine with Women with Jane Claire Jones last Thursday. It's on my YouTube channel, along with when I did with Maya Forstetter.
And also,
so if you haven't seen it, go, and you've got a spare hour, go and have a look.
And I hope also that either you get her, Helen, or we get her. But it would be brilliant to talk to Stephanie Davis-Arai about the great victory today and yesterday. So if you're watching this, Stephanie, right. I hope you'll pop on and do one of our shows, because you deserve, if anyone deserves a glass of wine, it's you,
Yeah, absolutely.
Love you guys. Lovely to see you. Thank you all the commenters.
Cheers, guys.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Like and subscribe. Yes,
like and subscribe.
I always forget.